What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Atari, Einstein Bagels, and many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. Like the founder of Noah Alper of Einstein Bagels, he talked about several previous businesses that were not successful and how he finally hit on Einstein Bagels to grow it. Our sponsor today is Rise25.com, where entrepreneurs of 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses come together live and in person every few months to solve their biggest business challenges and leave with lifelong friendships. Check out Rise25.com, run by myself and co-founder John Corcoran. It's application only. Today, I'm very excited. We have Jake Kloberdanz, co-founder and CEO of One Hope. It's a brand with a mission to serve the world, and they back it up, and I'll tell you what they do. The company started with an award-winning wine brand, OneHopeWine.com, and has since expanded into gourmet coffee and other gifts. They've gone from zero to selling over 750,000 bottles a year since its inception. That's amazing, Jake. On the serving the world side of things, One Hope has donated more than $2 million to date, helping to provide over 1.1 million meals to people in need, plant 56,000 trees, and much more. And as a side note, Jake was a 2-time national champion in rugby at University of California, Berkeley, so don't mess. Thanks, Jake, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, bud.
You know, I mentioned this because this is one of my favorite stories from doing my research is you started your journey in philanthropy, not completely true, but by doing something illegal.
Yeah, I've shared a story a couple of times amongst friends, I guess, and we're friends here. So,
right.
Just about the first time that I sold some extra tickets to a game, to one of our big games, and made a lot of money, and ended up donating a big portion of it, probably out of guilt as a younger person testing the lines and figuring out my ethical and moral code at the time, if you will. But I think one of the stories I haven't really shared, that is, I think, equally as interesting and engaging, and a big part of how I kind of came across this idea of combining social good with having a good time. In college, I was very active, as you said. I played rugby there. I actually played football when I first came in as well, and then was in business school, active in the student government, kind of the prototype person that ultimately ended up getting recruited into the job I did out of college. But I was also part of a fraternity, and I became social chair my senior year, and I also was philanthropy chair. So I had kind of a moment of brilliance where I decided to combine those two budgets and throw double the amount of parties, but turn every single party into a fundraiser. And our whole fraternity, of course, got behind this idea as well. And so we became that group that every time we threw an event, there was some sort of fundraising at the door, whether it was a basketball tournament or a typical party. And we actually raised more money than all the rest of the fraternities combined that year, my senior year, for the Oakland Children's Hospital. And I do remember thinking that it was brilliant from a business concept at the time, because we got a much bigger budget for throwing our social events. But it also taught me that those two things can be combined somewhat seamlessly, and that you could feel really good at the end when you're presenting that big check as well. And I don't think I had thought about it from that perspective of how rewarding that would be until that period. And so that was kind of one of those stories that I think drove me right as I stepped out of college, thinking in that way and thinking from that paradigm.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. At that point, did you know that you were going to form a company that was going to also, kind of be linked with social good?
I don't know that I formally knew, like I hadn't written a business plan for One Hope at the time.
Right.
And it did strike me at that time, like whatever I do and whatever I put my energy into to bring people around a mission or a business idea, part of that mission is going to be serving something bigger than yourself and something bigger than that event, if you will. And as I started to think about that in combination with my first job out of college, if you combine those two, looking back in hindsight, that's probably what gets us to One Hope.
What was your first job out of college?
My first job out of college was, well, I really had a couple, but my first one formally and my first big corporate job was with Gallo Wine Company, the largest wine company in the world. Great organization, really taught me from 0 to 1 about wine in my early days. And now I've kind of taken that from maybe 1 to 50, and I still have a long ways to go to get to 100. But they provided a great foundation. And then I also had launched a fun little online site with some buddies, computer science buddies from Berkeley. And so that was kind of the combination of things I would work on along with Hope Wine at the time, which was later transitioned into One Hope. And so when I got out of school, I had Gallo as my central day job, and then I was building a tech site with some buddies and also working on One Hope very quietly.
Jake, what were your biggest lessons you learned from Gallo that you take to One Hope Wine?
Gallo's just one of the best at keeping work ethic going in their organization, and a big part of their culture isn't just what they celebrate as a culture and talk about the exciting, stuff, is also about the kind of people that get driven out of their organization or don't work at their organization if you're comfortable with mediocrity. There's a lot of people that leave Gallo because they're very successful people and they're meant to be that way. But I think they attract some of the most talented people because of their standard for excellence. And being able to do that at such a large scale, as you go out and start your own business, you realize why some of the processes they had in place are in place and some of the controls. Obviously, there's all kinds of challenges when you're that big, and there's all kinds of things that are different about their brand and the way they run their company than us. But a lot of that's a luxury that we have as the little guy chasing Goliath, and stay as Goliath for so many years. There's some magic behind that, but there's also just a lot of blocking and tackling that goes into that. And so I think just doing the basics really well and working really hard, like some of those standard things that you see across the most successful businesses, are what I got a first taste of there.
I want to get into why wine for you in a second, but I know you downplayed the ticket selling, that a lot of it, you got some mom guilt when that happened, right? And your mom is a big influence for you, though. Yeah. Talk about your mom's influence for you growing up till now.
Yeah. My mom has been a huge influence. You're right. You definitely drove back into the historical conversations that I've had, because she does come up as a central focal point a lot of times, mostly because our company is 70% woman run, and then we have this even larger community of an extended family and team within One Hope of our cause entrepreneurs that I'll talk about later. And out of 1,500 of them, about 1,450 are women. So working with women and respecting women's abilities and their strengths relative to men, but also just independently of their gender, has been something that was kind of, I think, isn't something that it sets me apart as much these days, because I think we're going in a really good direction. But I think it was always just, I got it through osmosis from seeing it.
Well, you had two sisters also, right?
Yeah, I'm the middle boy.
So what was it like? Tell me, two sisters.
So that's the getting it through osmosis, right? Like you're around women your whole life, and albeit strong and empowered women between your two sisters and your mom. And, it's not like you have to be told to respect them. It's like you have to live with them growing up and learn to work with them really well,
Right.
and learn what makes them tick, just like they learn to live in a single habitat with me. My sisters, they each have their own story. My little sister has served time in the Peace Corps in Africa for 3 years.
Wow.
She's a nurse, got her master's in psychiatric nursing. She serves the world, and she's been in the trenches doing it.
That's amazing.
My older sister's really smart and very different than my younger sister, and just they're not polar opposites, but they're on very different ends of the spectrum in a lot of ways. And then my mom is the entrepreneur of the family, and was a real. I always looked at her as a risk taker when we were young, and I think she gave me a lot of my. I'm not a risk adverse person, to say the least, and taught me to try things and break things and not be afraid of it, and never got mad at me when once in a while I crossed the line. Actually, she did, but she understood, because I think she crossed the line a couple of times and tested boundaries and things like that. And so I look at her outside of the impact of what it's been to me in now working with as many women as I do and stuff. Also as a mother figure, being that, well-rounded, do everything mom, both a mom and a business role model to me. And that's a rare combination in a still generally paternal corporate culture worldwide and particularly in the U.S.
So, what's also interesting is I'm curious, Jake, when you were growing up, what you wanted to be when you grew up. I feel like when I was doing the research, you think differently. And there was this one story where they thought I don't know if you should advance, because there was like the words big, tiny, small, and something else. And you circled small, that was not like the others, because the second letter wasn't an I like the other ones. Like, you just thought differently, it seems, than most people. What did you want to do when you grew up?
I went through different phases. I wanted to be a doctor when I was in first grade, and it's interesting when you look at what a kid wants to do when they're younger. I think there's a lot of subconscious and conscious wrapped up in that. What at that time, what they see themselves as, or they aspire to be, and have other people see them as. And I think, I have a paper, one of my oldest little projects I have is like writing what you wanted to be when you grow up. And that's why I know that I had said doctor and that I wanted to cure cancer. And at that time, I didn't even really grasp what cancer was. I didn't grasp it until probably 18 years later, really, the truly what went on when somebody gets cancer. I just knew it was like a really bad thing, and that was probably like a really thoughtful and meaningful answer, And I think now I try to kind of look back at that and say, what drove me then to want that, versus now I think about my biggest impact in life being through being able to do that through business and our business. But I also went through a stage of wanting to be a business person like my mom. I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I went through a phase where I wanted to be a sports agent, because Jerry Maguire was like one of my favorite movies growing up. And so, and I loved sports and stuff. And so I remember different phases that I went through, but I think generally from about my sophomore year of high school on, I said, I want to build a big business someday, and I want to build a movement. And I've always had this little interest in at some point going into public service, but I've always hesitated to talk too much about that, because I think that I have a lot to accomplish in business before I would make that move.
So you were working on One Hope also on the side while you were doing your full-time day job.
Yeah, a little bit. I was just starting to have the early ideas for it and starting to look into it and research it. I actually ended up leaving the wine business to pursue I just knew that I wanted to pursue one of the businesses that I had started, and one was One Hope, which at the time wasn't really a business formally, in the fact that it was just me.
Yeah. What was it early on? What did it look like?
Early on, when I first came up with the concept, it was October of 2005, actually, and it was just going to be a cool fundraising device. And I thought about it as a small wine brand that I could raise some money for local causes with, and really was triggered to do it because a good girlfriend of mine got blood cancer, and
Wow.
it was an area for me to vent that energy and show support with her in probably like the most productive way I could.
Right.
But the other company that I was starting with my friends was originally called The Bar Book. It was going to be the Facebook after you got out of college, because that was only around for about 6 months, and it became thescene.com. And ultimately became, the most trafficked nightlife app on Facebook.
Really?
Wow. And we went through, the 2008 time where money froze up, and my buddy who was the CEO sold it, and I was the president. And at the time, I had One Hope kind of starting to gain some momentum on the side of that more so in mind. And that's really the reason why I left Gallo, was to pursue that and this Hope Wine thing that was going on. But Hope Wine was really looked at as more of a personal thing initially for me, and a hobby side project kind of a thing. And then, my mom was actually the person, when I recount it, that would always be like, what's going on with Hope Wine? Are you still putting some energy into that? Is there momentum there? And checking in on it, because she thought that was the better idea out of the two. And
Out of
and
the
it turns
bar
out-
book, you mean, compared to the bar book?
Yeah. And it turns out it was, although that idea was really good as well, and could have been something. It basically was Facebook pages before Facebook had pages for bars and clubs, and it had there was a lot of cool technology that we built there, but we were ahead of our time. People didn't have smartphones at the time, so for the most part, so you couldn't really do a lot of the cool stuff that we were creating on it that was social. But anyways, that was initially why I decided to take this leap, was the combination of just wanting to start a business, and I had two that excited me a lot more than working for a big company, and so that was enough. And then, within a couple months of when I left, it became apparent to me that One Hope was calling my heart more than anything.
Why is that? Because of your friend?
Well, I think that was a part that was there, consistently, but other layers started building up on it. I just started realizing that I was thinking about it more than I was anything else. And I also had a number of people that I worked with at Gallo that I respected the most while I worked with them, reach out to me and tell me they thought it was super cool as I started to get a little bit of headway, and that they would love to help out on it.
That's great.
And when I kind of saw that, and I saw the first early signs that a couple accounts wanted to pick it up and stuff, I knew that there was enough traction there where it was calling my name. And I didn't really know the path, and I hadn't planned it out a lot, but I knew that it was the right move when I finally decided to go full time on that and go that direction. It was definitely hard because, 4 of my best buddies were starting a company across the way with me as well. So, and I really believed in them. And it's funny how everything progressed. It's now 10 years later from when we started that company. I helped one of them found a company that he's now sold, a separate technology company, and sat on the board from beginning to sale. One of the guys is now our head of marketing at One Hope. Another one went on to found another huge technology company that's about $1 billion tech company with other people. And so all of us went our separate ways and found our successful route, and we all still keep in touch and know what each other are working on. So it's cool to think back about what could have been, but it also tells you that, like, either way, as long as
it would have been successful,
we were going to make it,
Right. So what did when you went full time on One Hope? This seems like I'd be nervous at the time. Like, what were your feelings, and what did you have to do at that point? Where were you at with the business when you went full time?
When I went full time, we had $10,000 in the bank. So
I'm scared right now. So how do you eat and live? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think part of it was naivety. Like we were just naive. No matter how you looked at it, when you're 23, you are naive. Even people who are born to be the biggest and best, the Steve Jobs, the Mark Zuckerberg, they're naive too, relative to where they end up getting to.
Right.
So by default, we were naive, but it actually ended up being the thing that gave us the opportunity to do it and not be scared. The combination of that and my friend Morgan getting cancer didn't just inspire this. It also was a wake-up call to me about one, mortality, that life is short, and it did strike a little bit of fear in me. And then on the same accord and in balance with that, it also made me fearless, because all of a sudden I was just like, life is short, and so
You'll just go for it.
Interesting balance between your fearlessness being driven out of the same thing that is creating fear, that it could end tomorrow.
Right.
And you have, a very short window in life to do what you want to do. And so that drove us a long way. It drove me a long way.
Right.
And I was able to channel that energy to a group of inspired, similar age people.
Yeah.
And if that's probably the most important thing I did in founding the company, was make that team believe that we could do it against all odds. And what my friend and I talk about is keeping the band together, being one of the most important parts of actually starting a small company and getting it off the ground.
Right. And Jake, you started the company, you recruited 8 of your friends, right? So I'm curious, it's hard enough to recruit one person or 2 people or 3 people. How did you recruit 8 people to found the company with you, and you have $10,000?
So it was 7 people.
Oh, 7 and you. I got you. Okay. Still, my question still stands. Yeah.
2 of them were ready to become
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
I mean, what did you tell them? I mean, this was the most convincing speech ever.
Yeah, it wasn't all at once. It happened over the course of 3 months.
Okay.
And it was a combination of me recruiting them and them recruiting One Hope and wanting to be part of it. So it wasn't all to my credit. A lot of it is the power and magic of One Hope.
Yeah.
That brought people around it, because it was a mission that naturally united people. But I do tell people that was the biggest sale of the whole thing along the way. It wasn't to investors and to the Whole Foods of the world and Virgin America and things like that. It's getting your team on board.
Yeah.
And
What'd you tell them?
When we all got together to launch it full time, I said, here's the thing. Today we don't have enough money to even pay anybody at the end of this month.
Right.
Which could be looked at as a bad thing.
Right.
And it could be looked at as a good thing, because we need to start selling immediately. And
Right.
we're all salespeople. And in this company, no matter what position you're doing, you're a salesperson with us, and we're all on that team together.
Right.
And I said that we would figure out a way. Everybody would get a consistent paycheck. It would be smaller than what they had come from, but everybody would have significant ownership over the brand they're building. And we would figure it out along the way together, and we'd be honest with each other and transparent. And everybody was willing to go off of that, And the second month of going full time on it, we missed half a payroll at the end of the month, and so there were a handful of people who were able to do that. I asked basically who can afford to skip this run, and ever since then we've never missed a payroll ever again. But it was $10,000 and $150,000 of credit cards to
Wow.
get the business off the ground. And I was on my last little bit that I could squeak out. I had moved, done all of the bank transfer thing or credit card transfers and 0%
You maxed
APR
it out.
and all that I could do. It's just amazing that I was only 23 at the time, and luckily my credit was really good in college because I drained it all the way, And then we got our first investor really about 4 months in, and it got us to the next layer and the next layer and the next layer, and it's like now we're on our Series C financing, and the company's at a very different place, obviously, but that first one, it couldn't have come any later. It was within about a week that it was going to take it.
So what did you do with the first 150K?
Paid people.
Yeah.
Paid people as little as we could afford, and bought inventory and bought a public storage unit, and put 168 cases into it, and we started selling. And we, used our buddy lived in one of those apartment units that had like a common room. We used that for our office for the first few months. We got friends to do things. I got my friend who's now, oversees our whole, marketing side and particularly the e-commerce side, who came from the other company I had started. He made our first website for us, and he got a little bit of founder's equity and stuff. And so, I didn't have a lot of cash, but I had equity, which is our own mint. And that's when I learned the power of, tying people to a brand. It's different than cash, because cash can be spent right away. But when you own something, you, outside of the actual ownership on paper and ultimately someday becoming worth something, you intrinsically own it, and you're part of it, and it's part of your legacy, not just part of your bank account and part of, and gone once you buy something material.
How did you know what to buy at the time?
I didn't. I mean, I knew,
because that's a big decision too, right? Because the majority of the money is like the product that you're going to sell.
Yeah, I knew what to prioritize. I knew we needed wine to make money and to show a product, so that took a precedent. And I knew to spend money on people, because I know that people are the number one thing that makes businesses. And then everything else was whatever we could afford and get by on. And there were a lot of things that got no's at that time for obvious reasons. So, yeah.
I mean, because that's a tough thing. Do you label it yourself at the time, or do you buy like initially to resell another wine and just donate it to a cause? I'm just trying to figure out what did it look like early on, because obviously now you have your own brands and you have like a million different varieties of it. What was it like in the very beginning?
In the very beginning, I went to a company, Sonoma Wine Company. They're actually the largest winery in Sonoma. They were great partners of ours. And at the time, they just made bigger brands there, and they didn't have a private label program, but they did have access to bulk wine stuff. And so I went there with 3 bottles with, homemade labels, and pulled them out and was like, "This is Hope Wine," and presented to this woman, Lisa, who was kind of the general manager there. And she was like, "Yeah, we'll give it a shot. We have some Chardonnay and some Cabernet and Merlot, and we can sell you some of our wine. We'll sell you a pallet of each, and we'll do it." And it was, it's a really small amount of business. So at the time, they're losing money on taking a client like that.
Right.
We grew it to, over 5,000 cases with them.
Wow.
And they ended up creating this as part of their business model, doing private label and wine. And as we got bigger, we, of course, wanted to have more control and get out in front of sourcing the wines that were to our particular taste and stuff, and be part of the winemaking. So we got to know the winemaker there and all of that stuff. And then that kind of got us to around year 4, which is when we made the relationship with the Mondavi family happen. And really in year 3, first meeting Michael Mondavi at a trade show, and not knowing who he was, but him hearing our pitch in the most organic and authentic way, and us pouring wine behind there, which tells you something about where we were at the time, where I was still, pouring wine behind a trade show table. And not that you couldn't find me or catch me once in a while doing that these days, but it was a lot more often then. Right. And the fact that Michael Mondavi was at those kinds of things also going around. Here's this guy who's a legend of the industry, right, still working hard, learning about new brands, learning about the industry and the new up-and-comers, and he took to ours because I think he saw a little bit of the entrepreneur that he was in us. And, he has his own great story of helping his father get Robert Mondavi to, one of the early wineries, post-Prohibition wineries, to being really an icon of the Napa Valley and a global brand. And he ends up being the CEO and chairman, and they sell in a very documented exit that went on. But no matter whether you sell a brand that you create or not, you don't sell that skill set and that hunger. And Michael still to this day has that. You could feel it coming off of him. Really? I think he felt it coming off of us. And so next thing led to the next, and we ultimately end up having his son, the grandson of Robert Mondavi, Rob Mondavi Jr., co-creating our wines with us, and being not only a winemaker with us, but really letting us still own the flavor profiles and our wine portfolio, and still be a reflection of us, not just him. He's a big part of it, and his fingerprints are all over our brand. Right. But sharing it with us and being able to just be a part of something like that rather than having to be front and center. He's always been more than fair about that. So that's kind of me taking you on a journey beyond how we got started with wine, and where we are today with making our wines with Rob and Tony Coltrane as well, who was a winemaker for Opus One in their early days, and for Robert Mondavi with 52 harvests under his belt. It's been quite the journey on the production and as some may call it, manufacturing side. Yeah.
Jake, there's so much to cover, from the challenges, the milestones, to distribution, to how you sold initially. But since we have limited time, I'm going to fast forward to today and what's working really well. And for you is the Via One Hope. So I'd love for you to talk about that program and what's going on with that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited about Via One Hope. You probably, if you checked into it, you kind of understand the model is really not so different than what you've seen with Mary Kay or Tupperware or Stella and Dot, these party planning models. We refer to it as merit-based marketing. So people who join this organization, they really make money and can make an impact based on a meritocracy, which I think was one of my most important learnings about the way that Cal Rugby ran and why we were a championship organization, is it ran off of meritocracy. When I was a senior, I had freshmen nipping at my heels, and some of them were better athletes than me, and they saw playing time, and they beat me out if they were better than me on a given week. And at the time, that's hard to swallow, when you're a senior and you've been paying your dues for a long time. Right. You start to realize that championship organizations, loyalty is important and it's celebrated, but meritocracy is even more important for keeping an organization present and around and giving it edge. Right. And so we've pulled a lot of that thinking into Via One Hope, and the idea is to become a cause entrepreneur via One Hope. So Via One Hope is our platform for empowering other people to go out and serve and celebrate, which is the mission of our brand. Yeah. To empower people to serve and celebrate.
Do you have a favorite story of someone who's used this in a certain way?
Yeah, actually there's so many stories, and picking an individual one out is kind of hard. There's there's a woman with us who has 2 children who are autistic, and she not only makes an income via One Hope, but she also makes an impact by funding ABA therapy for children with autism. And
Wow.
when you hear her share her
That's
story and how One Hope is such a part of her identity on a professional side, but also in the community, you can't help but get teary-eyed.
Yeah.
We have a woman who is in the Navy with us, and she does events at her base, and she raises money for lots of different causes. But she, 4 of our different products go towards Team Rubicon, where we reunite veterans with a sense of purpose by sending them out into natural disaster areas with Rubicon. Amazing organization. And when you have that direct of a connection of this cause entrepreneur who's actually serving in the military, and she's empowering this organization by selling those products, it's amazing. And the model is such that because we're not selling through retail or a restaurant, we're able to give the cause entrepreneurs commission for marketing the brand out there, but we're also able to give the person who hosts the event an additional 15% of the sales of our most popular items, a 6-pack, a 12-pack of wine, an extra 15% towards their local cause of choice. So you've got people all over the nation raising money for their breast cancer walk or their kids' school, and they post these stories up about how they raise money that is doing this for the school, or is going to allow me to raise this much money for my breast cancer walk. And earlier this year, my grandma passed away from it, or my aunt got it. Like, all of these are touching, and we're realizing that it's not just us inspiring this community, it's this community inspiring us.
Yeah.
And they're cause entrepreneurs just like us, and they're using a lot of what we've built and the infrastructure we've built over the years to launch their business. But it's amazing to hear their stories and their personal journeys. And it reminds us of ours like 9 years ago when we were just getting off the ground.
Jake, I want to be the first one to thank you. I know this is holiday season right now, and so I promise you I would not make this go too long, even though I'm tempted to make this go another 2 hours. So where can we point people towards to check out? I know onehopewine.com. Where else should they check out on the web if they want to, check out your products, or maybe check out Via One Hope?
Yeah, so via1hope.com if they're interested in Via One Hope. That's where you can become a cause entrepreneur with us and get a wine education, be part of a fun community, make an income while making an impact via One Hope. Onehopewine.com, we set up a landing page actually for you guys specifically, and for all the people who follow everything that you're doing. So onehopewine.com/inspired goes to a page that'll get them a little bit of a special on holiday gifts if they want to buy them. We have
That's great.
50 unique different gifts. And then, you'll find us at nationally at Whole Foods. We're launching a big promotion with them at the beginning of the year this year towards ending world poverty and funding microloans with them in developing nations for entrepreneurs that are getting started. And a bunch of other places. We're in 8,000 restaurants and hotels and retailers across the nation. But Via One Hope and onehopewine.com/inspired will make it easy. And I'm definitely going to have to come back and join you. I did note that if you have Bill Belichick on, Michelle Obama, Phil Knight, then you have to bring me back on.
And was there another one besides Phil Knight?
The one that if I could bring somebody back, it'd be Norman Borlaug. He taught the world to feed itself, and I think that most people don't know his story. But unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, other than the legacy of his work. So if I got to go back in time and interview anybody, Norman Borlaug would probably be it. But I think right now my list of 3 is Bill Belichick, Michelle Obama, and Phil Knight.
All right.
So if you could hook that up, I mean, those are some pretty easy asks, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, I'll keep you posted with that. all big feats in itself. But Jake, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, especially around this busy time for you. Everyone should check out onehopewine.com or Via One Hope, which is VIA onehope.com. And if you want to put /inspired in front of onehopewine.com, you will get a discount. So
can I throw in one more thing before you close it out?
Yeah, you could throw in as many things as you want. Yeah.
Thank you for having me on behalf of myself and our team. Every time we get to do something like this and spread the word about our mission to serve and celebrate, not only serve, top quality wines, gourmet coffee, our gifts, but also serve the community and the country while doing it and gathering people around celebration, whether they're celebrating themselves at the end of a hard day of work or they're celebrating around a wedding or like some big milestone in their life. The people who give us a voice and to share us with their community, no matter how big or small, are the reason why, a fairly grassroots organization that started with $10,000 in the bank and 168 cases in a U-Haul truck loaded into a public storage unit become big successes and make it to where we are. And they're also the reason why we're going to go from where we are to where we're going. Right. And so I really do appreciate it. And I think you're a really good interviewer. You let me go and rant back and forth there. And it's fun. It's fun to get to share our vision and our story with you. I appreciate everything.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. And happy holiday. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy. Talk to you soon, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.